Hi, everybody. Good evening. My name's Alan, and on behalf of the crew, I'd like to welcome you to another edition of Bridging Heaven and Earth. We're delighted to be here again tonight. Tonight's show should be a true bridging of heaven and earth. Our two guests tonight, one, Dennis Lewis, has written an extraordinary book. It's called The Tao of Natural Breathing. And it's a book that can inform, it could expand, it can help in a process of healing and growing and harmonizing the human spirit, the human body, and the human emotions. It's a very powerful book in the sense that it really can help a human being in certain techniques transcend and experience their true nature, their true harmonious being. So he's here to talk to us and has had an incredible spiritual history and a spiritual journey, which I'm sure we'll get into. So, and we also have with us Abigail, who is one of the favorites of Bridging Heaven and Earth, and she's going to sing 3 songs tonight that just always inspire us and open our hearts and bring the love really to the surface. So I think that tonight's show is really going to be an expansive one, a growing one, and one that's going to truly bridge heaven and earth. So as we usually do at this time, just to set a tone for this show and to bring us all into an experience of quiet, of openness, of gratefulness, of humbleness and hunger, hopefully, all those things can be done in the next 30 seconds. Let me lead you in a short meditation, just a quietening. If you know how to meditate, do the technique you know. If you don't know how to meditate, just close your eyes if you like, or just watch the screen if you like. Just try to quiet your thoughts, just try to relax, just get comfortable, and then we have a wonderful show for you tonight. So please join me. Thank you. And now it is my honor again to welcome Abby to Bridging Heaven and Earth, and she's going to be singing Moby's Trick. So whenever everybody's ready, Abby, take her away, and we're really just please relax and listen, because you're in for a truly extraordinary experience.
The difference is heart and need. The difference is complication and simplicity. The difference is complication mimicking the complexity of simplicity, and the complexity of simplicity simply being. Once you let them in, they never go away. You could exercise and they'll only want to play. Devil does his duty, angels do their best, and you let them all in, feeding on the breath. Open up the sail, deceive the target. Hail, hail the garden, past all the flames.
Hi, so I'm here with Dennis. Hi, Dennis.
Hi, Alan.
Good to see you again.
Right.
So I thought it'd be interesting if people heard, I mean, when I read about your spiritual journey that got you to this chair now, it seemed very interesting to me. So why don't you just, like fill people in a little, like, how did you, open to the spiritual path, and how did, you kind of move through? I know you've had different teachers and you were, involved in different methods for a while.
Right. Well, I've always had the sense that life is kind of upside down the way it's presented to us by our parents and education, so on.
In what sense? Explain.
Well, the sense that the values are not real values, that we go through our life without really understanding what's going on. We go to doctors, and the doctors don't tell us anything about ourselves. We go to educators, and the educators teach us only how to function a little bit in the world. Our parents really don't know much because they didn't, there was not an owner's manual when we were born.
Right.
And so I had the sense that there was something missing. And so in my middle 20s, I began to search for what that was. And it led me down a long path. I worked for many, many years in the Gurdjieff work.
Gurdjieff was, for people who are not familiar, I always like to go back to the beginning. He was like a teacher, a master out of Russia.
Right, out of the Caucasus and near Russia. And he came to the realization through his own searches that we were asleep, that basically human beings live asleep on
mechanically,
this earth.
in a sense.
Mechanical, right. Asleep, disharmonious, not in touch with the earth, not in touch with heaven, not in touch really with ourselves.
With ourselves,
at all.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so this path was extremely important for me because it taught me that we need to learn how to begin to sense ourselves from the inside, to begin to observe ourselves, to see, first of all, we have to see that this is true, that we're asleep. Mm-hmm. How do you see if you're asleep when you're asleep? That's very difficult.
Right.
You need someone to wake you up momentarily, enough so that you can say, I was asleep.
You know the difference, you can see the difference.
You can really taste the difference.
Right.
And part of this sleep, and this will eventually lead us into this whole question of breath and breathing.
Right.
But
I
part
was
of this,
hoping.
yes. But part of this sleep is that we identify with whatever it is, whatever piece of reality, whatever piece of ourselves, whatever thought, whatever feeling, whatever sensation, an itch, a hunger, whatever it is, we identify with it. We say, I'm that. I am this itch, I am that hunger. And of course, I'm not that. There's many, many things that I am, but that's only one tiny aspect. So I became a businessman and had as a goal to learn how to function in this life and at the same time somehow to be free inside. Because the Gurdjieff way is the way of being in the world and yet to be free of what's going on.
Well, I mean, I think throughout history it's been like be in the world but not of the world,
right,
kind of,
right.
In a sense.
So this path led me on into many, many other things, but eventually I began to study with an Inventiveness master who very much helped me understand that what we really are in our essence is love and consciousness. And these two things, which are very closely linked, are what we are, but it's very difficult if we're identifying with everything that's outside of us and all the hungers and the desires and so on to remember this. When I sold my company, because all through this period I had a public relations agency and it was growing very, very rapidly, and I sold the company. I wanted to get out of the business, but at the time I sold the company, I was having a great deal of problem with my physical
problems,
health
right,
problems.
Right.
And I had a pain that doctors couldn't diagnose. It was in actually now as I know it, it was in the gallbladder liver area. And I was fortunate enough to meet a man who did hands-on what's called inner organ chi massage and breath work. Now I had studied breath work for many, many years I had studied my breath through the Gurdjieff work by learning to observe it, and also through Advaita Vedanta doing yogic breathing.
Advaita Vedanta, just explain
Advaita Vedanta is the idea that there is only one. That there's
right.
really only
we
one.
talk about that on the show a lot. Dedicated to the oneness.
There's really only one.
Right.
And
one energy, one force, in a sense.
One.
Right,
You can't even add those words.
Right,
you know.
Okay.
This so I had gone to doctors and so on to see if I could solve this pain. They couldn't figure out what it was, and finally I met this practitioner of this form of healing, and he taught me how to begin to sense my inner organs and begin to learn how to breathe into them. And this was quite extraordinary because as I did these practices long before I was writing the book, and this teaching came via Mantak Chia, who's a Taoist master, and I also studied a number of years with him. But this was quite extraordinary because as I began to go inside my own sensation, I said, my God, this is incredible. What we call sensation is a rich field of many, many, many levels of perception. And most of the time we forget that. We don't know it. We have a kind of somatic amnesia. And I discovered that our breath is the most immediate way to come into this presence of our sensation.
Mm-hmm.
So this was.
Well, it's something we always carry with us.
We carry it with us.
I mean, as long as we have life, we have breath.
Exactly.
So it's the closest thing and the most consistent thing.
And actually, the pain went away within 3 weeks of this man working on me and learning how to. And this had gone on for about 1.5 years. This pain, and I discovered that it had to do with some of my own repressed emotions, and one of them being anger, because in Chinese terminology, the liver is connected with anger, and my pain was in the liver area. Mm-hmm. And I
but
realized
it was spreading. You were so angry.
Yes, and as he began to work on me, and as things began to open up, these emotions began to become very clear.
Right.
And that's the other thing about breathing, or another thing about breathing is Elizabeth Barrett Browning once wrote, the poet wrote, "He lives most life whoever breathes most air." Now, that's not just a matter of oxygen, because breathing is learning how to take in and to release. And this is actually a kind of miracle here, because when I inhale, what am I inhaling? I'm inhaling new life. I'm inhaling new impressions. When I exhale, what am I doing? When I inhale, I'm being inspired. Mm-hmm. Inspired from above, because I'm not controlling my breath. When I exhale...
You don't practice it at night, so you... No, it's only kidding.
When I exhale, what's happening? I'm expiring. I'm dying. I'm learning to die in the moment. And most of us have a great deal of problem letting go of our breath. Most of us do not really exhale. We exhale a little so we can breathe.
You think we inhale better than we exhale?
No, not really. Because
no,
we don't,
I thought we're lousy at both. So.
Yeah, but the key here is that if you don't exhale, you can't really inhale. If there's not an empty space, if there's not a place,
right.
If there's not a letting go.
An empty cup, there's nothing,
right.
There's no room.
So our being has to become very clear in a sense. Exhalation, we clear ourselves out and we let go of everything that's unnecessary in our lives. What's the first thing that happens when we're born? We inhale. What's the last thing that happens when we die?
We exhale. Right?
We exhale. So our
the whole
breath,
cycle.
Our life is one breath.
Cycle, right.
And within that breath, there's millions of other breaths. And each of them is related to birth and death. And so it's really a question of beginning to learn how to perceive in myself what it would mean to let go of my breath, to let go of, and to allow the earth to support me. Because when I let go, I'm allowing the earth.
Well, and
yes.
it actually is supporting you anyhow. It's
right.
just letting go into that and not fighting it in a way.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. Because we carry so much tension in our bodies.
Right.
And this is one of the things I learned very early on with the Gurdjieff work, through self-observation, seeing that everything is tense. I mean, we use 5 times as much effort as we need to do almost anything, including breathing, you know.
Right.
And most of us are upper chest breathers, which means we're living up here. We're living
right.
up in the top of our heads,
right.
and not even really truly there either, but we're living up in ourselves, and we're not really rooted. We're not connecting heaven and earth. And in fact...
and you can't be on the show if you don't do that. So.
That's right.
So that's why we're clearing the set and we're going to stop the show. No, go ahead.
So bridging heaven and earth it's incredible, because there's a section of my book where I talk about this idea of connecting heaven and earth. And so we're really on the same path here. We're really
right.
talking about the exact same thing. Only I'm exploring it through our breath, because our breath, in a way, is given to us by God, one could say. We do not make ourselves breathe. If we did, we'd be dead, because we're not attentive enough
right,
to keep breathing.
We miss a lot in the middle. You know, it's interesting, if you've ever practiced meditation, you realize, you know, that you know, you're gone for like long stretches. I mean, and then when you start being conscious, you realize you're driving a car, and you know, you're in like San Francisco, and you can't remember how you got there leaving Santa Barbara. You know, it's like you were thinking all over the place.
That's right. So for me, breath is a way in. There are many other ways in. I'm not saying breath is the only way, but it was something that I felt was not getting enough attention, and the attention it was getting, for example, pranayama and yogic breathing. Carl Fried Durkheim, who wrote a book called Hara, and I talk about this in the introduction to my book, The Tao of Natural Breathing, but Durkheim said that yoga breathing exercises were not designed for Westerners. They were designed for people from India. And there's quite a difference because Indians have, he said,
a long spiritual leg.
Yes, but they also have an inertia, a connection to the earth. And Westerners are being pulled up into their heads all the time. And most breathing exercises have tension as part of the exercise, which draws you up. So for the Indian,
so it's perpetuating
our problem
of our problem.
Whereas for the Indian, it was quite harmonious to have this upward movement. But for us to have we need the rootedness to the earth. We need the connection to the earth. We need to learn how to let go, to relax, to come into our sensation, and to allow the sensation to animate us, to become really alive and not be moving all the time from our thoughts. So,
because that's like, it's like taking us an extra step in a way. I mean, even if it was good at it, it's still like one step removed from an actual experience or something. You know, moving in harmony rather than having a thought and then moving.
Right, exactly. So in the work with breathing, there's a lot of things that you can discover. And one of the things that I discovered very quickly was that we're filled with space. That, and I have a chapter called The Spacious Breath, but we're filled with space, and that this space is a space which is very healing if we can come to it. And it's not easy to come to it, but one of the people that I studied briefly with, Ilse Mittendorf, who's a world-famous breathing therapist and a very spiritual woman who lives in Germany, talks about the 3 breathing spaces. And in Taoism, you find very much this idea of breathing spaces. And just share with you a little an experience that I had after doing this work for a while. I used to wake up in the middle of the night. I don't know whether it was inside of a dream or whether it was another reality, what it was. But I was exploring through my own sensation, my whole organism, exploring my liver, my kidneys, my small intestine, large intestine, and so on. It was as though, for the first time, I was in contact with myself, at least with my body.
Right, your physical form.
But in this physical form, there were many, many levels and layers of reality.
Absolutely.
So it's not, so we think of our bodies and we think of our minds, but the body, the sensation of the body is so alive. It's, and we've had some discussions, and we're sort of in tune about this, and it's so alive, and as you go deeper, it takes you into this spaciousness, into this emptiness, where everything is welcome.
There's no separation.
Exactly. Yeah.
There's openness and love and compassion.
Well, there's other things too, but the heart is open. The heart is open. There's a welcoming, and that welcoming is quite extraordinary, because how often do we really welcome? Can you welcome difficult things? Can you welcome the good things, the bad things, the painful things, and so on? But that's,
you mean almost be open to what comes.
To what comes, to everything.
Right.
And to be totally present no matter what it is.
Okay, well, hold that thought. I think now what we'll do is have a second song. Abby's going to sing a Quiet Pearl, and she's going to be accompanied by Jai on the guitar. So whenever Abby's ready, Jai.
Closer to give me a kiss inside. I wait to hold you, 'cause I know I need the ride. I've got to go, 'cause I know I could never lie. I know inside myself to hell. I'm crouched inside here as I'm waiting for the tide. If you ignore me, you will never see inside, never see inside. The rooted cypress beckons me to go away. I want to follow, but I'd only live a day. I know tomorrow, but I shouldn't go that way. I'll live forever, but here is where I stay. I am not lying, I am living in a shell, and I don't know if I'm opening to heaven or to hell. I'm crouched inside here as I'm waiting for the tide. If you ignore me, you will never see inside, never see inside, never go in me, never see inside, never go away in me. Be honest to the tide. Your roots cannot take a ride. Be honest to the tide. Your roots cannot take such water. I am not lying, I am living in a shell, and I don't know if I'm opening to heaven or to hell. I'm crouched inside here as I'm waiting for the tide. If you ignore me, you will never see inside, never see inside. The waves are knocking on the door, and I've come out of the floor to breathe in silence is a promise that I made. But I was older then, I have no form now. I am not lying, I am living in a shell, and I don't know if I'm opening to heaven or to hell. I'm crouched inside here as I'm waiting for the tide. If you ignore me, you will never see inside, never see inside, never go inside, never see in me, never go away in me.
Well, thank you, Abby. That was fantastic. So, what prompted you to write this book? Did you feel that that information that you were just describing wasn't available, or wasn't available in a certain form, or
Right.
what? I mean, writing a book is a major thing.
Right. What I felt was there's a lot of books with a lot of breathing exercises, and most of them are yogic breathing exercises, and they're wonderful exercises, especially for people who already breathe naturally. But what would it mean?
That would be for like 3 or 4 people. No,
Yeah, well,
probably
well,
not.
a lot fewer than
Fewer than think,
one
right,
thinks. Yeah.
right.
Because to breathe naturally would mean to breathe with your whole body.
Right. And to be in a relaxed state.
And to be in a relaxed state.
Right.
The whole body. If you watch a baby breathe,
Right.
the whole body breathes. If you watch a dog, I have a golden retriever, and everything breathes, including her tail and her ears. Everything breathes when she breathes. And that's how we were meant to breathe, because when that happens...
Without the tail.
Without the tail. When that happens, what happens is that all the organs are being massaged. We have our own built-in massage therapist, if you like, because when we breathe properly, the diaphragm actually goes down and massages all the organs. I discovered, and I didn't know this, most people don't know this, that the diaphragm actually supports the heart. Think about this for a minute. The diaphragm supports the heart. And as one breathes fully and naturally, it massages the heart. It massages the liver, it massages the spleen and stomach, it massages the kidneys indirectly. It massages the whole being, which helps support the heart, make the heart doesn't have to work as hard. It helps our immune system, because the lymph that flows through the lymphatic system doesn't have a pump. The only pump is exercise and breath. We don't get much exercise. We sit at desks all day long. We're breathing up here. It's not, you know, it's amazing to me that
the internet isn't helping up.
The internet doesn't help at all. I was just inspired though by something in this song, and especially breathing in silence. And I want to read. It made me think of this is not my poem, but I think it gives a sense of something quite wonderful. You know? This is well, you'll hear.
Okay.
I said to the wanting creature inside me, "What is this river you want to cross? There are no travelers on the river road, and no road. Do you see anyone moving about on that bank, or resting? There is no river at all, and no boat, and no boatman. There is no tow rope either, and no one to pull it. There is no ground, no sky, no time, no bank, no ford. And there is no body, and no mind. Do you believe there is some place that will make the soul less thirsty? In that great absence, you will find nothing. Be strong then, and enter into your own body. There you have a solid place for your feet. Think about it carefully. Don't go off somewhere else. Kabir says this: just throw away all thoughts of imaginary things and stand firm in that which you are.
This is,
you know, and
so in your experience, the best tool, the best technique for you to do that is through the breathing techniques that you're describing in this book.
Not even so much through the techniques, although there are many practices in the book, but it's not so much the techniques, because techniques come and go. It's a certain attitude. When we think about it, ordinary life is a miracle. The fact that we're alive is an extraordinary miracle. I mean, scientists tell us there was a Big Bang. Religionists tell us God created the world. Who created the Big Bang? Who created God? If you really
keep going back, I always we were talking about that at lunch yesterday at the beach. You know,
you really
keep going
stop
back
and face the immediacy of one's own being. It's absolutely staggering.
Unbelievable.
It's staggering.
Right.
And we go through life as though things were boring and difficult and all of this stuff. And in the meantime, there's this underlying miracle that's supporting us the whole time that we don't see, feel, experience very often.
That in itself is a miracle, that we don't. It's so obvious, you know, that we're hurtling through space on a ball. You know what I mean?
Right.
And we're held to it, and we have countries on it. I mean, it's so...
That's right.
Some of these things, all these separation things.
We have all these divisions.
Divisions. It's so patently ludicrous. When all the astronomers or the astronauts go out there, and they look back at the little planet, they say, all these divisions we have is so silly. I mean, when they see it from that perspective, but most of us don't.
But in actual fact, if you think about your breath for the moment, we breathe in with every inhalation 10 to the 22nd atoms of air. So that's 10 with 22 zeros after it.
It's a lot of atoms.
Out of those atoms, every breath we take, there's 1 million atoms that have been breathed by everyone who's ever lived on this earth.
We're sharing a lot, in other words.
So we are connected with every creature that has ever breathed on this earth, and every creature that will ever breathe on this earth will be breathing our atoms someday, and already are breathing some of our atoms. Now, this is amazing when you think about it, because
onions.
So we're connected. We're connected. Plant life is giving off oxygen as a waste product. We breathe it as our main. We give off carbon dioxide as a waste product. So plant life, human life, everything is dependent on everything.
It's all interconnected.
It's all interconnected.
Right. And we don't recognize, and that's
don't-
like the lunacy of the human condition.
Lunacy. But we
It's like-
don't even realize that we're here. So
Right.
what would it mean to be here? To be here would be to know that I'm a breathing being, to actually sense my inhalation, my exhalation. So the beginning of breath work, from my approach, is to begin to experience the miracle of my breathing here, now. Inhaling, taking in new life, taking in new impressions, new impressions of each other, of myself, and to exhale, to let go of all my divisions and old attitudes and all the garbage that, the waste products. Because those waste products will be used by some other creature or some other being.
We don't want to pass that along.
Well, no, it's all right. The earth could transform negativity.
Right.
But we have to be grounded in order for the earth to transform the negativity. The earth is a great transformer. You put manure in the earth, what happens? Beautiful life comes out,
Grows
its
out of it.
nourishment comes out. So, but the beginning is sensing that I'm breathing right here and now. And to me, this is quite amazing. I mean, it's already a miracle just to sense that. And this is what people who try breathing actually say, oh, I'm doing pranayama through one nostril, or I'm, doing
Right.
this, or I'm doing that. But
You mean the simpleness of it is
The-
the simple miracle is
the
being
immediacy of being present to the fact that my breath is not from my will, but it's from an intelligence that I have no conception of. Now, if I start from there, then I can actually begin to practice with my breath. I can begin to learn how to, because there are laws. For example, the diaphragm, which is connected all around the rib cage and goes down, strands of it go down into the lower back, into lumbar 2 and lumbar 3. Why do people have so many lower back problems today? Well, partly we're not breathing right. We're sitting at desks and so on. So how can we breathe right if we're sitting at desks, we're not in touch with our breath, we're not present to ourselves? So as I begin to learn the principle, I begin to discover that in order to breathe properly, my belly has to move. Now, this is very difficult in a society which prides itself on hard, flat bellies. Women's fashion magazines, men's gyms, all over the country.
Right.
You got to have this,
And so you think it's difficult to breathe with that kind of musculature in there?
Well, because what happens with natural breathing is the belly breathes, the belly opens, and the reason the belly has to open is so the diaphragm can go down, because all of these
Glad
organs...
I'm getting fat then. That's working out good then.
No, fat has nothing to do with it.
I got confused again.
The belly does not grow. The belly, what
But
little
you
belly...
mean like a looseness, not a looseness,
an openness,
an
a
openness.
suppleness,
Right,
a suppleness. And
rather than a tightness.
now,
Of,
the difficulty is
Right.
the belly is where we store all of our negative emotions. When we're frightened, when we're angry, when we're all of these things, what do? We hide stuff in our belly. And again, coming back to Elizabeth Barrett Browning, he lives most life who breathes most air. The problem is we learned as children how to breathe less air so that we wouldn't have to feel as much. And we now take this technique, which for children was quite good because they didn't have a mind that was developed yet that could sort of withstand the negativity coming from their parents, let's say, or the judgments and so on. Mm-hmm. I don't mean negativity, because I don't mean parents are negative, but what I mean is there are constant judgments being made, and a child has no concept of what those judgments are about, but he knows they hurt. These judgments hurt. So the child learns how to breathe less, and a tight belly is one way that you breathe less, because it locks all the organs.
Up the diaphragm.
Right, it locks all the organs, and the diaphragm comes up, and I begin to breathe up here. Now the lungs at the top are very small. The lungs at the bottom are very big, deep. And so the fact is, if we're only breathing a little bit of air into the top of the lungs, not only are we getting not enough oxygen, but we're not getting all this movement, this opening and closing. You see, in the Taoist tradition, everything is opening and closing. Everything is yang and yin, constant alternation. And we're trying to be all one way with this flat belly. And we're trying to look good, but this is an outer sort of phenomenon. So I think that this is a major problem. So one of the first things, and people can try this, one of the first things that's very helpful is you just rub your hands together and you put them over your belly and you just see, what does my belly do when my hands are on it? And actually you discover that your breath is attracted down into your belly. Not the air, but the movement. and what's called chi, what's called this chi energy or prana in Indian terminology, or
And what's
you know,
the energy?
the actual energy
Right.
begins to be attracted down toward my navel and just under the navel in what's called the hara in the Japanese tradition.
You know, let me
Yeah.
just ask a question. I think part of what, you know, in this time, and maybe part, like we've talked about this before in the New Age, so-called, or the spiritual community, people want to force their energy to like the higher chakras.
Right.
So they're like not connecting, they're not bridging heaven and earth, they're not
Exactly.
harmonizing. So why don't you
Right.
describe that a little? Or did I finish?
Yeah. No, well, a lot of the work that I do has to do with learning how to stand properly. For example, when one is standing, or even sitting, when one is sitting or standing, does one allow the weight to really sink? Or am I holding myself up with my shoulders, you know? Am I leaning in some way that I don't have to just sink? And as I begin to sink, the energy from the earth comes up and meets me, and actually can come up through the heels and up through the whole body, up into the crown and out. And as I inhale, the energy from the heaven can come down through the crown and down toward the feet and into the earth. So there's this constant movement of energy from heaven down, earth up, and cycling like that. But I need to release my energy in order for that to happen, release my weight and begin to sense my sensation. I have to be in my own body. And that's where I don't want to be, because there's aches, there's pains. I don't like a certain aspect of my body. I don't like the way my belly is or my back, or I don't have enough of this or that,
Right.
whatever it is. But the thing is, we need to be inside.
That's where we live. So if we're not experiencing where we live, then it's almost like a fantasy or an illusion. in a
Exactly.
sense.
And that comes back to Gurdjieff, who says we're living our lives totally asleep, because we go around with these fancy ideas, but we don't even know where our own liver is, or our own diaphragm is, or our own whatever. I've gone around...
Well, I mean, the best place to experiencing whatever you can experience is within yourself. I mean, how can you know, that's the tool you were given, in a sense. That's the vehicle you were given to experience
Right.
the whole spectrum of human experience.
Right, Al, but what I'm saying is that people say, all right, I'm going to experience what's in me. I'm going to go directly to God. And they many people bypass the immediacy of what's going on in their own sensation. So, for example, as I've gone around various parts of the country talking and going to bookstores and doing
Signings
workshops
and
and
right.
signings and things like that, I say to people, do you know where your diaphragm is? And many people...
They take it out of their pocket.
Yeah. That's right. They point down to their navel, they point down to their pelvis, they point,
My boyfriend's
all
got
over.
it, you know. My boyfriend's got it.
So that means they're not experiencing their diaphragm. And this diaphragm is one of the biggest organs in the body, one of the biggest muscles in the body. If I'm not experiencing my diaphragm, if I'm not experiencing the movement of my breath, how can I even begin to conceive of talking about God? There's something ludicrous about that.
Right.
Really ludicrous. And
Add to all the ludicrous
That's
things
right.
we do, just add
So-
that to it. You might as
That's
well.
right. So it really, it starts right here, and it starts right now, and there's nowhere
Actually, I
else.
was interested in that you have, we'll talk a little more about the next session. I think Abigail's going to sing a song pretty soon, but you have a new newsletter that you started.
Right.
What's the name of it?
It's called Inner Alchemy.
And one of the lead articles is the miracle of ordinary existence or
Ordinary life.
Right.
Right. And this is very important, because without that sense of miracle, all this other stuff doesn't mean anything. I don't think, personally.
Right, when you experience things as a miracle, I mean, then you're going to start to like move through life in a certain joy, in a certain life-fulfilling means, it would seem.
With a certain openness, at least.
A certain openness.
Yeah, very much.
And so did you find it was a gradual process to do that? I mean, as you developed an experience that an openness and a
I think it's a whole lifetime. I mean, I'm just at the beginning. I really feel like a beginner, and it feels like a very good place to be. You know, beginning and beginning again and beginning again to be here.
Right. Okay, so now, interestingly enough, Abby's going to do another song first when she gets set up. It'll be called Let It Happen. And I don't know, every time Abby comes on, all the calls happen. Everybody's just so excited. So Abby, let it happen.
Just be grateful you got your wish. Don't give credit the side effects. Don't jump into the past or you'll find yourself there. Don't believe in how it ever was. Just be happy you got your dish. Don't give in to the spontaneous itch. Following a path you always knew you never would. When wet sucks in the fire, don't you need a little more? Couldn't it be better? Don't you need a little more? Couldn't it be better? Couldn't it? Just be happy it finally fits. Got your furniture where it sits. Don't jump into the back or you'll find yourself there. Don't believe in how it ever was. Don't you need a little more? Couldn't it be better? Don't you need a little more? Couldn't it be better? Couldn't it? Don't you need a little more? Couldn't it be better? Don't you need a little more? Couldn't it be better? Couldn't it? Following a path you always knew you never would. Jumping on the track you never knew it was so good. Just be grateful you got your fix. Let it flow, give it time, let it mix. Just be happy, let it happen. 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 Don't you need nothing?
Thank you, Abby. Yeah. So what prompted you to do this newsletter? I know that too is a lot of work because we were talking about doing a Bridging Heaven and Earth newsletter and so far we're still working on getting the webpage together and we haven't quite gotten to that. But so why did you decide to take that on? It's called Inner Alchemy,
Inner
right?
Alchemy, Exploring the Art and Science of Self-Transformation. The reason I did is I've been working a lot with the body, with sensation. I do healing work. I worked in an acupuncture clinic for about 1.5 years, and I began to see that, and I began to meet a lot of other people who are doing this kind of work. And I said, you know, there's not really much being written that really has a certain level of thinking. You know, we have these brains, and for the most part, we say, well, the brain is what gets in the way. Well, it's not really thought that gets in the way. It's the poor quality of our thinking that gets in the way. Mm-hmm. It's the fact that we don't really think about the things we need to think about. We're thinking about other things, and we don't follow through the difficult aspects of what it means to really think, because we've been given this brain, and it's got to function.
Yeah, it's a computer. It's an incredible computer.
It's an incredible computer, but it actually has a kind of an attention that can go beyond being a computer. But to reach that, I need to really begin to think about issues in a sustained way that are important issues. Not with advertisements, not with, cliches and so on to come in and distract me, but really to stay in a certain line.
So when you talk about important issues, who I am, what am I doing here?
Who I am, and what are the kinds of things, how does self-transformation really take place? There are so many different aspects to it. When I was in Russia a few years ago, I met, I did an interview with Father Alexander, a Russian priest who had started a little group, and it taught me something about...
A group like a Gurdjieff group?
Well, no, a group that met outside of the church and discussed what they experienced in the church. So similar in a way, I guess. They had group meetings. Mm-hmm. And I asked him about the prayer of Jesus, and he said, well, the prayer of Jesus is, you know, he didn't really want to talk much about it. He said the prayer of Jesus is really connected with transforming energies. So in my next issue, for example, I have a little bit of that interview with him where he talks about some of the, what the prayer of Jesus is really all about. So that, for example, so I'm trying to explore all the different sides involved in self-transformation, and to do it in such a way that people will begin to see that the mind has a real place here. It's not just giving up the mind, it's not just going into the body, it's not, you know, but to really begin to think about issues and questions. And for me, it's a tremendous tool because I love to sit down. It's like meditation. I can sit down and try to write something from my heart, from my experience, from my observation, and to stay with it with my mind in such a way that it can communicate to others. That's already feels to me like a tremendous help to me, because it helps open me. Because I have to try to see how will people hear this? You know, will it touch them? Will it not touch them? I don't know. But if it touches me, I think it's going to touch them.
Right.
And I haven't seen anything like this. There used to be a journal called Manus that was actually published out of Los Angeles. The man died a number of years ago, and I have not seen a journal or newsletter like that that really went into issues and issues connected with what it means to be human on this earth. You know.
What is your experience? Now, you've been doing a lot of book signings all over the country with, you know, your book.
Right.
What is your view of how, you know, people are taking to this, and, you know, the openness to breathe, you know, this type of breathing, or, you know, new ideas or things like that?
Well, what's happening is I'm getting calls now. I just got a call from somebody in Seattle recently who wants to put on a workshop, and in fact that's already organized. And I got a call from a bookstore in Oregon. They heard about the book and heard about, you know, what I'm doing, and they want to put on a workshop.
So I mean, you find
there's a lot of interest.
A lot of interest.
A lot of interest, and it's because I think people are recognizing it's not breathing that's at issue here.
It's life.
It's our life and our death that's at issue here, and our breath is one of the most immediate ways into that, because our breath connects our minds, our emotions, and our bodies, our souls, our spirits, our energy bodies, if you like. Our breath permeates all of that. And the question is, as I breathe, can I receive new impressions of myself and other people? And as I breathe in and as I breathe out, can I let go of all the tensions, the old stuff, the unnecessary stuff? That's where the discipline is. So, and again, this whole question of happiness is a very important question, and we just, you know, the last song was very beautiful. But how do I come to that? There is a certain discipline that's needed, because in order to allow something to happen, like this profound happiness that is at the core of our being, we have to let go of what's unnecessary. We have to let go of all the lying, all the bullshit, all that stuff. If we don't let go of that, this other will not appear. It just won't appear.
It's covering it.
It's covering it.
In a sense.
Yeah. So this is, to me, and the breath is therefore like a tremendous analog to our whole life. It really shows us what we have to do, because there is something we have to do.
And how would you describe that? You've just been doing it for the last hour, right?
Yeah, well.
No, if you had to describe, what would a human being have to do? I mean, if you could, maybe we have 5 minutes left.
Okay. The first thing is we have to stop lying to ourselves. And we all know what our own lies are. We all know. And each of our lies will be different than, you know, some people will lie about their experiences, some will lie about the tremendous things that they're doing. Doesn't matter, but we have to stop this internal lying. It's not so much lying to each other, because
that's beautiful.
But we have to stop lying to ourselves. And Rumi wrote a beautiful poem about this, the great Sufi poet, and I don't remember the whole poem, but he said he admires and respects someone who tries to stop lying and tries to have only clear being, a kind of clear openness,
A purity of-
a space where I can take life in and I can see it and I can experience it and I can live it joyfully, sometimes painfully, because happiness isn't just joy, it sometimes is very painful. When you lose a close, somebody who's very close to you, that can be very painful. But if I lie to myself about it, if I lie internally about who I am, what my powers are, I say, well, I'm wide awake, I'm in touch with God, I'm conversing with God. We hardly converse with ourselves, really.
Right.
It's like we want to cover up, and our breath is intimately involved in that, because as we breathe more, as we open up the breathing to include all the parts of ourselves, we will not be able to hide from those lies. We
So
will
how
start
do we
seeing those
develop,
lies.
I mean, sometimes we don't see it in a sense because it's painful. How do we develop an objectivity? So what we see about ourselves, that we are liars, that we are mostly asleep, that we are generally, my word is pathetic, So how do we deal with that? How can we look at the human condition without going, that's too frightening?
Well,
I mean, how can we develop that objective eye, or however you would look
it
at it?
has to be done a little bit at a time, because I think very often what people do is, and this can happen on drugs, people take LSD or they take
That's what I've heard.
something, and they can have a tremendous experience, but it doesn't compute, it doesn't connect very often with the rest of their life. It's like this experience that's out there and they can't even remember very often what happened. So drugs are not really a good option. What we have to do is develop a kind of internal awareness, internal attention, where we can begin to notice what's going on in ourselves. And we can begin, as we're talking to somebody, for example, can I follow my heartbeat? Can I follow my breath? Because my breath and my heartbeat will tell me when I'm lying. Because there'll be a catch. The breath will want to be smaller.
Right.
Because it's because I know, my body knows and my psyche knows when I'm when I'm not telling the truth. At least at a certain level. There are deeper levels that may not know yet. And so we do what we can, and we work 10, 15 minutes, 20 minutes a day. Maybe pick a friend, and without them knowing it, you in the middle of a conversation with them, you just watch your own breath. You listen to your own heartbeat, you stay in touch with your own sensation, and you see, as you talk to them, how you feel inside, at the same time listening very carefully to them. And gradually you begin to get this attention, this kind of internal presence, if you like, that can take in more and more and more of the facts of myself, these negative things, without getting, going off the deep end, so to speak. So it has to be done gradually.
It's a slow, gradual process of like shining light where there was darkness before.
Exactly. Shining light. Now, sometimes one has an immediate perception of wholeness, and that's fantastic. If one can have that, that's great. But one needs to come back to this shining the light as much as one can into the places where one doesn't want to shine the light. And my breath can help me with that.
Well, I'd like to really, it's interesting, every time the show's over, it's like we start and we could talk probably all night because we talked all yesterday afternoon about the same stuff. So, I'd like to thank Dennis, and certainly I'd like to thank Abby for coming. And again, I think it's been an extraordinary show. And remember, if there's going to be a book signing. Dennis is going to do a book signing tomorrow in Santa Barbara. This is July 11th when we're showing it live. So if you want to go to a book signing tomorrow, call me, and I'll give you the information. 805-687-2053. Thank you. Good night. God bless you.